Audition with your normal 1, normal 9, do 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 do. Why can't I talk? Dun, dun, dun. Hello and welcome. My name is Kaylee Jo and I make content all about my experiences as a theater educator. I have also directed over a dozen shows in my career, meaning that I have sat through hundreds of auditions. This also means that I have some insight into the monologues that may be really overused, especially by high school students. I was recently perusing the website of one of my favorite publishing companies, Your Stage Partners, and I stumbled across a page where they have shared over 40 free monologues from their published works for people to use for auditions. I went through all of these and I selected my top 10 monologues that I have never heard in an audition before and I think would be really great if performed by a teen or high school going into college student. These are kind of the general unspoken guidelines for monologues. Of course, if your specific theater group requires something different, then by all means follow that. Your chosen monologue should be between 1 and 2 minutes long. There really isn't ever a situation where you would need to go over 2 minutes, and if we're being honest, the audition panel has usually made up their mind by the first 60 seconds. So try to keep your monologue between that 1 and 2 minute mark. This one may be somewhat surprising to people, but your monologue needs to come from a published play, not a movie, TV show, book of monologues, or even something that you have written yourself. And as a side note, please do not choose a monologue to perform from the show that you are auditioning for. That's a little too on the nose. Your monologue should fit the theme or vibe of the play that you're auditioning for. In other words, do not bring something Shakespearean to an audition for a contemporary play or vice versa. You should audition with a piece written for a character that you could reasonably portray. So if you are 16 years old, I would not recommend coming in with a monologue that was originally written for a 90-year-old war veteran. Choose monologues that allow you to connect with the character on a personal level. Obviously, the entire monologue is not going to fit your life and your experiences to a T, but if you can find one thread of commonality, it is going to allow you to connect with that character on a personal level and showcase some of your best work. Audition with your normal voice. Even if the original character for the monologue you're using generally has an accent, go ahead and use your normal voice. Also, don't choose a monologue that hinges on the character having an accent, unless the director has specified on the audition materials or told you beforehand that they expect to hear an accent. Just use your normal voice, and in the meantime, put any accents that you're comfortable portraying on your resume. All of the following monologues abide by the guidelines that I have just reviewed, and I've chosen them specifically with teens in mind. Quick disclaimer, I do not own the rights to any of these pieces and am sharing them solely for educational purposes. I will link all of the reference plays in the description box down below. All right, let's jump into my top 10 selections, beginning with Winnie Foster's monologue from Tuck Everlasting. This is based on the children's novel by Natalie Babbitt and adapted by Mark Frattaroli. It takes place in the 1880s in the US and follows Winnie Foster, a young girl who is tired of being told what to do and who to be, so she runs away and meets the Tucks, a family living in the woods who have the blessing and the curse of living forever, leading Winnie to have to make some really tough decisions. This monologue actually opens the show and lets the audience know about Winnie's frustration with her life and her decision to run away. So it is a dramatic piece, but it's also somewhat lighthearted because she's actually speaking to a toad the entire time. This monologue lands between 60 and 90 seconds long. Next up, we have a monologue from Vern in the play The Hauntings at Cedar Park by Del Martin. This monologue is originally written for a male character but could very easily be portrayed by any gender. It falls between 90 seconds and 2 minutes long and is considered a dramedy or a combination of drama and comedy. This is a one-act play that follows groups of students in different time periods searching for the same ghost at Cedar Park. I really enjoy this piece because it starts out very lighthearted and comedic as Vern talks about his experiences having to travel with his parents, but ends with a very kind of hair-raising, spine-tingling moment whenever he goes back and talks about the first time that he encounters a spirit. Now we have a monologue for the character of Brian from Last Day of School by Ian McWethy. This monologue is originally written for a male character, but could very easily be portrayed by any gender. It is a little on the longer side. It's going to hang out really close to that 2-minute mark, depending on your pacing, so make sure you time this one out and be careful with it. It is considered a comedic piece. This play is set in modern times on the last day of high school. A student overtakes the intercom and challenges everybody to try something new, brave, or meaningful on this last day of school. This leads us to Dave, Brian's best friend, who has been in love with Madison Montgomery family for years, but has never been brave enough to ask her out. And so after this intercom is taken over, Dave announces that he is finally going to ask out Madison Montgomery, and Brian cannot help but blow up because this is something Dave has been talking about doing for years and has never actually done. So it's very fast-paced, very comedic, and just a great choice for any contemporary comedy. We have another monologue from Ian McWethy's Last Day of School, this time from a character named Katie. This dramatic monologue falls between 90 seconds and 2 minutes long and was originally written for a female character. Disclaimer, this one does have a few moments of questionable language. In this monologue, Katie is confronted by a fellow student who tells her that she has been calling him by the wrong name for years. She has always called him Chad, but in fact his name is actually Gary. This really backs Katie into a corner and causes her to be really open and honest about her struggles with her reputation and people's perceptions of her. Now we have a monologue from the character of Marley in John Jory's semi-amazing, sort of sensational, almost unbelievable Christmas spectacular. This 90-ish second long comedic monologue is pretty off the wall, but I think it's really funny and really resonates with anybody who has ever been a part of a show. It was originally written for a male character, but I really think there's some flexibility here, especially with high school, where it is not uncommon to gender swap when casting. In this piece, an actor has just been told the play he is in, A Christmas Carol, is being cancelled. And after 2 years of playing the turkey boy and finally getting the role of Marley, he is understandably upset and goes into great detail about all of the work that he has done to prepare for this role, but ultimately begrudgingly accepts his fate. Next up, we have a monologue for the character of Jack from 101 Breakups by Jason Pizzarello. This is a comedic monologue about 60 to 90 seconds long. It was originally written for a male character, but I think it is very flexible in who could portray this. This monologue is from a one-act play that is all about breakups, and this particular breakup is relatively lighthearted, as Jack goes into detail about all of the plans he had for him and Jill, including how many children they would have and how deeply he would mourn her eventual death from old age. Let's welcome the character of Wendy in What Happens in Neverland Stays in Neverland by John Jory. This monologue is absolutely hilarious. It turns the classic Peter Pan story upside down, and it was originally written for a female character. In this version of the story, Wendy is not at all on board with being stuck in Neverland, and this monologue actually serves as a video diary begging someone to come rescue her, although we don't find out that fact until the end of the monologue. The issue with this monologue is that it is very long and comes in at just over 3 minutes, at least whenever I did my practice recording. So if it were me personally, you're going to have to cut this down to fit into 2 minutes. I would keep the first few sentences of that first paragraph to give context. I would cut the rest of the first paragraph and then perform the second paragraph in its entirety. It will fit within your 2-minute time frame and still tells a complete story. Next up, we have Craig from The 7 Torments of Amy and Craig, a love story by Dawn Zolidis. This piece was originally written for a male character, but within the context of the monologue, I think could be portrayed by any gender. It's between 60 and 90 seconds long and falls into the dramedy category. In this monologue, the character of Craig is apologizing to his significant other, Amy, for being jealous. It touches on some really relatable themes and ends on a funny note. The character of Greg from The Cast List by Rocco Natal and Jason Pizzarello. This comedic monologue is about 60 to 90 seconds long and was originally written for a male character. In this monologue, Greg has just recently auditioned for a production of Romeo and Juliet, and he is incredibly confident that he is going to get the role of Paris. So confident that he may have already told his family and friends that he got the role. Unfortunately, the cast list comes out and that is not the part that he got. So he concocts a scheme to trade places with the student who did get the role that he wanted, and hilarity ensues. I have saved the best for last because this final monologue is my favorite of the 10 that I am sharing today. It is also from the one-act play The Cast List, but is instead from the perspective of a character named Phil. This 90-second to 2-minute long monologue is my favorite because of how relatable it is as somebody who is involved in theater. It's probably more of a drama than a comedy, but it's very lighthearted. So Phil talks about how his entire life he's played basketball and he's never really loved it, but it's something everybody in his family told him he should do, so he did. But then he gets injured right before the season starts, giving him the opportunity to do something he's always wanted to try and audition for the school play. Phil talks about how when the cast list comes out, he is so excited to have even made the team and see his name on the list, while everybody else around him is really angry and frustrated with the spots that they got. And this leads him to kind of compare this new experience with the school play to his experiences in basketball, and talks about how you just have to work together as a team, work towards a common goal. And I love this. Sports analogies don't usually get me as a theater kid, but this one really pulls at the heartstrings, and I think the same will be true for any audition panel who has the opportunity to hear you perform this monologue. The links for all of these monologues are in the description box down below. I hope that this helps you in your journey towards your next audition. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, break a leg.